Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to SFF180. Thomas here, your host as always. Thank you for joining me, and happy Thanksgiving to all of you who celebrate the holiday. If you don't celebrate the holiday, I hope you have a great day off, and you eat a whole lot of food, regardless. That's kind of what today's video has something to do with. I was not really planning on creating any content today. As most of you know, I've been on a long extended road trip. Got in late last night, very tired, got a great night's sleep, and I woke up first thing this morning, not thinking I would do any recording today, only to find out that I had been tagged by my good buddy Mike over at Mike's Book Reviews for this Thanksgiving-related book tag. And this is a tag created by another booktuber, Madison Goodyear. I will link her in my comments, in the description, as well. This, I think, is just, this was thought up as a way to do a different kind of holiday-themed book tag from maybe traditional Thanksgiving book tags. And as most of you know, if you've been following my channel all through the years, I don't usually do tag videos, but I thought it would be nice to maybe do a little something different now that I'm back home at last, back in the studio, getting back into the swing of things. This would be something different to kind of, get those creative juices flowing, right? So thanks again, Mike, for tagging me. This is a series of categories that have to do with the Thanksgiving holiday itself, and specifically all the different courses and servings in a traditional American Thanksgiving meal. And then we relate these things to books. So, yeah, without any further ado, let's chow down. So the first category is mashed potatoes. And this would be for a book that is a crowd pleaser. And I think that this is one of the most aptly named of all the categories, because if you don't like literally anything else about a Thanksgiving dinner, it is hard to resist the scrumptious allure of freshly made mashed potatoes, especially if they still have like little tiny bits of peel in them. And then you just slather them with butter and cheese and maybe some bacon bits and whatever else, right? It's just awesome. So anyway, yeah, what is a crowd pleaser? In the world of science fiction, well, there's a great many of them, but I'm going to go for this category with The Martian by Andy Weir. Kind of a can't-miss hit novel. Became, of course, a hit movie, as you all know. This was Andy Weir figuring out a way. He cracked the code when it comes to how to make hard science fiction, which is traditionally not the most accessible of science fiction subgenres to the general reading public. And he figured out how to make it that kind of accessible, have a story that was plausible and even valid in terms of what we know from existing science, right? That's pretty much the description of hard science fiction. Does it conform to what we know and can confirm through our current scientific knowledge? But also telling a cracking good, very human, very witty, very funny story at the same time. And so yeah, The Martian, that is my plate of mashed potatoes for this menu. And it's also fitting, right? Because what did Mark Watney eat? What did he grow to eat when he was stranded on Mars? Now the next category, the next menu item is turkey. And now this one is very counterintuitive, I think. Because usually when you use the word turkey to refer to, a work of art, a book, a movie, a play, an album, right? You're usually talking about something bad, right? If you say something's a turkey, you're saying, no, this really sucks. That usually has been my approach in all of my previous years when I do my Turkey Day special videos. I'm usually talking about a book that I greatly disliked, right? But no, for this tag, now the turkey is the must-read classic, probably because turkey is the classic, main dish for Thanksgiving dinner, right? So a must-read classic, once again, there are so many, but I'm going to try maybe to not repeat other people. And I'm going to go with Richard Adams' masterpiece, the timeless novel Watership Down. Substituting rabbits for turkeys this time, you guys. This is such a beautiful piece of literature, such glorious writing, so evocative. a scary tale, many times a dark tale, a sad tale, but very exciting. Has a lot to say about our relationship to nature, our stewardship of nature, or lack thereof, as it were, seen through the eyes of all the little rabbits in a rabbit warren who are trying to find a new home because their warren is getting, is ripped up because of development and agriculture and what have you. Human interference is messing the lives of these rabbits up, and so they've got to move and they have to go across. It's a dangerous quest, right? A classic quest story. Fantasy, probably not. Fantasy adjacent, definitely. I mean, the only real fantasy elements in Watership Down would be the anthropomorphization. There it is, Thomas. Got it all out. Of the rabbit characters, right? They talk. Richard Adams gives the rabbits their own belief systems and mythology and lore and what have you. But it very much influenced a great many writers in fantasy, like Tad Williams, big influence on Tad Williams when he published his debut novel, Tail Chaser's Song, about a colony of cats, right? So yes, so that is my must-read classic. This is the kind of book that you could read and reread literally more than once every year, and it doesn't lose a thing. So, Watership Down. Now, next up, we have gravy. Just like you can't pour enough gravy on your turkey and mashed potatoes, this is a category for a story that you can't get enough of. Now, this, for me, I'm going to say this is always going to be kind of an of-the-moment feeling that I might have, towards... There's nothing... It's not that my tastes change. It's just that when I am into a particular story at a given time, into that world... I can't get enough of it at that time. I have to have full immersion in the whole experience, and it was like that for me, like when I was a child reading Lord of the Rings and other great fantasy series. It was like that with reading my favorite space operas, like Alistair Reynolds and, Memory Called Empire and things like that. So present time. So right now, as I happen to be recording this video, I would say that my gravy... the gravy boat that I am swimming in is going to be the Greenbone Saga by Fonda Lee. This is a series that is as close to perfection as anything that I have read in many years. It's a compelling fantasy world, very much inspired by our own real world. It takes stylistic cues from, and this is where it really hits home. If, like me, you are a huge fan of Asian crime cinema, whether it's like the Hong Kong action movies or the Yakuza movies from Japan, or some of the really hard-hitting crime films that are coming out of South Korea, from filmmakers like Park Chan-wook. So this is absolute catnip if you're a fan of that sort of thing. But just, the complexity of the narrative, all of just, the layers of it, it really has that Godfather richness to it. And just magnificent, just the humanity and the excitement and the suspense and the tragedy of it, just glorious. Yeah. So right now, you got me. I cannot get enough of the Greenbone Saga. Okay, so next up we have Cranberries. I don't know that that's necessarily my favorite part of any holiday meal. It is for some people. I mean, I don't dislike them, now that I think about it. But anyway, it's described here as a palate cleanser. Is that what cranberries are? I'm unaware of this. I've never known cranberries to be thought of as a palate cleanser. Are they? I mean, maybe some of you out there, maybe there's an active cranberry community on YouTube who can fill me in on this aspect of cranberry and its use. But here it's for a palate cleanser. What is a book that is a palate cleanser? And I'm thinking here, generally it could be any of the works of John Scalzi, but I'm going to focus on the Old Man's War series in particular. John Scalzi is very much a writer like Andy Weir, extremely accessible and easy to get into, even if you are someone who does not, traditionally or habitually read science fiction for entertainment. They're warm, they're witty, full of pathos. Maybe sometimes he goes a little over the top in that aspect of it, but that's just John. Extremely readable, easy to get into books, the kind of thing that you could slot in between. Let's say maybe you finished one major epic that you really had to commit to, and you're not quite ready to commit to something else quite that hard. John offers you an easy time of reading to just sort of give your brain a nice reset, as it were. So there we go. That's my palate cleanser, The Old Man's War series by John Scalzi. And next up, we have green bean casserole. That's what's on the menu. Looks gross, tastes great. That's the description here. So I am guessing that what this is really referring to, if we want to talk about books, would be maybe the kind of thing you wouldn't necessarily think you might like, and then you try it and you're like, oh, well, that's not bad. So for me, I've got a couple of examples here. One would be Jeff Vandermeer's Born. An absolutely incredible, sui generis, I believe is the term. It's unlike anything else out there. Part of his, his near future or maybe alternate timeline, we're not entirely sure, the echo fiction that he is doing. And this is a fascinating little story, completely going against any sort of conventional wisdom in terms of how to write a story that works, and yet he makes it work anyway. The title character is this amorphous blob of biomass that was created by some nefarious corporation, despoiling the environment, but it turns out to be kind of this story about parenthood and love and belonging. And poor Bourne is such a sad little character because he's not sure of his place in the world, or he doesn't really know what he is, and he tries to find ways to to fit into some kind of normality, but it just doesn't work because he's a little too different. And then, of course, on top of that, Vandermeer is also riffing on epic fantasy tropes and adventure fiction tropes. It's just not the kind of thing that you think would work in any capacity. And yet I would say that it is something of a modern masterpiece. So there you have it. And then my second book in this category would be Queen of Teeth by Haley Piper. I mean, where else would you find a comedy, apocalyptic, science fiction, dystopian body horror story in which a woman basically growths, I can't quite say gives birth, but it comes out of her body, this ravenous, massive monster out of her vagina that destroys the entire city. Newark, New Jersey, by the way, so perhaps it's an exercise in civic improvement. So good on you. But anyway, this is just, again, one of those books where you're reading it going, am I literally out of my mind for reading this in the first place and for enjoying it as much as I am? Because it is highly, highly enjoyable. Just something else wild from the unpredictable mind of Haley Piper, who is like one of the great rising stars of horror fiction right now. And so, yeah, that's my green bean casserole. Born and the vagina monster from New Jersey. Moving on to the next menu item, stuffing. Okay, stuffing is definitely comfort food, chock full of carbs to make you fall right asleep. And so these are for, as you might expect, a book that is a comfort read. And for this one, I'm going to go back to a classic that I don't think gets talked enough about, and that is Peter S. Beagle's masterpiece, The Last Unicorn. This is a book that just has stood the test of time. It's one of those career-defining works. Peter S. Beagle is a wonderful man, has had a very hard life, and both a professional and personal level, but I feel like he's had vindication in recent years, and his entire career, despite so many great works, he will be known for The Last Unicorn forever. Once again, just a really beautiful lyrical story that is also very meta. Again, in the way that it acknowledges the tropes of fantasy. It was meta before being meta was cool. And terrific. It's something that I think none of you, if you're fantasy fans, should miss if you have a chance. So, for a comfort read, for all the stuffing that you could eat, yes, by all means, grab The Last Unicorn. Okay, so for this next one is going to be very expansive, the way I talk about it, but this is Pies and Desserts. Guilty pleasures. Okay. Now, first off, I do take issue with the term guilty pleasures. I don't think any pleasure, anything we genuinely take pleasure in, we should ever feel guilty about. Just take pleasure in your pleasures. Love them, right? Because there are this life that we are living in right now, so much to cause us doom and stress and anxiety and anguish. So take pleasure in your pleasures wherever you can. And don't feel guilty about them. But I understood what is meant by the term, right? I mean, for example, like if you're going to sit down and eat half a chocolate cake in one go, you're not doing it for the nutrition. You're not doing it for your health. But you don't care, right? Because it's chocolate and it's frickin' yummy and you've got a craving and by God, you're going to have that cake. because you deserve it. That's the whole point. So yeah, you know it's not good for you, but screw it. Now, for this one, I'm going to be very broad. Any science fiction and fantasy mass market paperback book from the 20th century. Although I'm cheating a little bit because I think the 2000s was actually the very last decade in which the mass market format, was had prominence in the industry. They've lost their appeal. They're no longer like the bargain way to publish. That used to be great for publishers as a way to introduce new writers into a field, for example. It used to be the case that mass market paperbacks could be produced very cheaply. That's no longer true. And so what you've seen publishers do, instead of finding other ways to kind of bring new writers into the field, they're just kind of tightening their belts and being less and less welcoming of new talent. I'm very, sorry to say, unless they're like such a thoroughly well-established publisher, somebody like Tor, that they can just afford to do it. But yeah, now why am I giving you this answer? Simply because, again, I have this love for old science fiction. It's partly, maybe just from my generation. The way I grew up buying mass market paperbacks because they're the kinds of things a kid could afford on his allowance. And so I discovered everyone that I loved, including Tolkien, right, at that age. And I've already done a full video just focused on, my love for mass market paperbacks. So I'm not going to repeat myself. Just go watch that because it's a good video. Very informative, if I do say so myself. But this also ties into a discussion that I was recently having on Twitter with a fantasy book critic, the folks over there, on the subject of DNFing, right? The ever-popular DNFing topic. I don't DNF. I just don't, right? If you feel like it, go ahead. I'm not judging those of you who do. Your life is your life, right? But my feeling is, first off, as a reviewer and as a critic, knowing what I don't like and why I don't like it, and being analytical and writing that critical review where I pull my thoughts together, whether they are positive or negative, that's always a helpful exercise for me. I learn as much about myself as a reader from reading books I don't like, just as much as from reading books I do like, probably even more. Knowing what it is about stories that don't work, knowing why that thing isn't working, is just as valuable as knowing what you love and just embracing what you love. At least that's my opinion on it. That is what has sculpted my whole approach to reading all my life. So I don't DNF because whether I love one of these old science fiction books or whether I don't love them, because, they're going to be old, they're going to be they're going to be dated, some of the ideas are just no longer going to be, the approach to storytelling is just not going to work anymore. I don't care, because I am never at a net loss when I engage in the act of reading. Never. Whether I love a book or whether I hate it, it's always a win for me either way. It's just how it is. Never a net loss to read, because either I get great enjoyment from the book because I love it, or I don't love it and I am given the impetus to think and form my thoughts and understand myself and understand the mechanics of story so that then I can better appreciate what I do. There you have it. So that's my answer. That's my pies and dessert. Just let me have all of it. Now, carrying over that theme into the next menu item, this is the Veggie Tray. Just for looks. I guess maybe that's the whole idea of Veggie Trays. You kind of, oh, how very pretty you laid all that asparagus out. I hate asparagus, but it looks really nice on the plate. No offense to any of my vegetarian or vegan friends, and I like a great many things on the veggie plate as well. But I get it, okay? Don't take it too seriously. This is just a tag video, all right? Just for looks. Now here I'm going to, once again, continue on that theme of classic books in mass market paperback, and I'm going to list the Doc Savage series. Who knows about these? Who is like either of my age group or older or something? Who knows about these at all? If you don't, well, this is going to be a little bit of fun for you. Doc Savage was one of the classic pulp magazine series, going all the way back to the early 1930s and lasting, I think, through the late 1940s. These were just pulp men's adventures, right? Not really fantasy or science fiction, but I would say adjacent. Starting in the late 1960s, early 1970s, they were reprinted in mass market paperback by Bantam Books. And those were the editions that I discovered when I was a kid. The stories suck. I'm not going to lie. They suck. They suck pretty bad. And they don't just suck because they're old, right? As in being products of their time. Because there's lots of stuff from that era that's still great. I'm thinking that even by the standards of their time, these stories kind of sucked, okay? They might have sucked in a fun way, right? They might have sucked in a way that you enjoy it for sucking, right? We all have that so bad it's good stuff that we enjoy. But yeah, it's not high literature. But again, this is maybe like in the guilty pleasure thing. The people back then who read these books, read these pulps, knew they weren't getting high art, but they were just fun to read. And I'm willing to bet that if he were still alive, the man who wrote the vast majority of the Doc Savage stories would agree with me. This was a writer named Lester Dent. The Doc Savage stories were published under the byline Kenneth Robeson, which was a house name from Street and Smith Publications, who published the original magazine. Lester Dent wrote, I believe, 169 of the original Doc Savage adventures, as well as a great many other pulp stories, in that era. He is known for putting together his own kind of checklist, his formula for writing like the perfect pulp story in 60,000 words, kind of like the 3-act structure of a screenplay. And he is quoted. I mean, these are his words. He got really good at writing reams and reams of sellable crap by sticking to this formula. So he knew what he was writing was crap, right? But it made him frickin' rich. During the Great Depression, the guy bought a yacht. Okay, so that's how successful this was for him, just professionally. But the books are garbage, right? I mean, like, it's, the main character, Doc Savage himself, he's like this, like almost a cartoon version of the alpha male, right? The Ubermensch, right? He's muscular and athletic, but he's also like a brain and a big whiz, and he knows everything, and he can do anything and work any machinery and knows how to use any weapon, and he's like a walking encyclopedia, and he's perfect. And of course, he's just completely indifferent to, romantic allure, right? Because he's a man on a mission, and so the books are just like that way, right? They have that sexism of the period. They're almost ludicrously racist, right? I mean, like, it's very easy to tell the bad guy in any Doc Savage story because all you have to look for is the Asian dude, right? Or like the swarthy man, right? That's always going to be the bad guys. And they're always like these bumbling oaf bad guys. So, I mean, yeah, it's like that kind of trash, okay? But why do I have it on this list of just for looks? Because the Bantam paperbacks have absolutely the most bangin' cover art, pulp cover art you'll ever see, right? I mean, most of these are poster quality. Lurid, gaudy, and everything that pulp art should be, okay? Stories are garbage, but the covers, oh my God, yes. I mean, just the perfect junk food for the eyes. Now, moving on, let's get a little bit more present day, shall we? We are into the category of leftovers, right? Better on a reread. Okay, so just as leftovers can be yummy the next day, whether you reheat them or eat them cold, right? Perfectly fine. These are for books that were better on a reread, and I am going to list the man who is now one of my very favorite science fiction or space opera, specifically, authors, and that is Alastair Reynolds. And I'm specifically going to list the Inhibitor trilogy here, Revelation Space, Redemption Arc, and Absolution Gap, because it took me about 3 attempts to properly read Revelation Space and appreciate it. The first 2 tries, I bounced off it so hard because Reynolds' approach at the time, this would have been like 20 years ago, was so new and different and ambitious in ways that were kind of unique that I couldn't, right? I mean, it was just too much for my sad little brain to take in. But I would put the book down, and there were things about it that still, like months later, I couldn't get out of my head. Years later, I couldn't get out of my head. Like certain scenes, imagery. I have books that I read that I love. I'll give them 4 stars, but then maybe like a year later, I'm like, do I remember that all that well? I have to go back and consult my review. It wasn't like that with Revelation Space. There was just stuff that was like photographically vivid in my mind. So I'm like, okay, obviously there's something there. Maybe it was just me. And in this case, it turned out it was. And so, yeah, the 3rd time I think I tried Revelation Space, boom. I was just like, yes, I am on board with this. So, yeah, better on a reread for me, anyway, Alastair Reynolds. Now, moving on, we are getting out of the pleasant part of the Thanksgiving meal into maybe the less pleasant parts. And let's talk about the long-winded uncle. All right, goes on for too long. What is a story or a series or something that has gone on for too long? Well, I think I'm going to get a lot of hate comments for this one. But here's my answer. Go ahead. Let me have it. Say what you will. But you can't deny I'm right. And next up, we go into family drama. Plot twists and turns. Now, maybe this can be, an unpleasant experience, but it doesn't necessarily have to be unpleasant. Once again, I want it to be not quite so obvious here, because the most famous plot twist, I think, in all of science fiction would probably be the ending of Ender's Game, right? But I didn't want to bring that one up because I feel like everybody knows it. It's kind of like talking about the big twist at the end of The Sixth Sense, right? It was, it was like knocked you out of your seat the first time, right? But then, of course, it became now the cliche. So no longer, the twist necessarily does not have the same impact it did originally. But it was very influential and formative. But I didn't want to talk about Ender's Game here. I think my choice for this one, and again, I'm not going to tell you anything about it. You're just going to have to read the book for yourself. But a science fiction novel that has some really terrific plot twisty things going on, is Use of Weapon by Ian M. Banks, one of his culture novels. And I'm just going to leave it there. If you want to know what I'm talking about, discover it for yourself. All right, and my final category here, holiday planning, anticipated for 2023. Well, here's my answer for this. I'm not going to tell you. Yet, okay? This is one of those where, for the time being, this is like the Christmas present is wrapped and it's sitting under the tree, but you better not peek, okay? As you all know, the end of every year, early in December, that's when I do my anticipated videos for books coming out next year. And that is what I'm doing once again. This will be the week of December 5th, specifically the 6th, 7th, and 8th. Okay, the Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of that week. So it's not this coming week, but week after. Look for those videos, science fiction, fantasy, and horror. 3 videos across 3 days, like last year. Last year's videos covered a full 100 books. Probably going to match that this year. So that's when you'll find out what my holiday planning is, but not right now. So just keep an eye peeled for those videos. Okay, and that is all I have time for this episode of SFF180. I want to thank all of you for watching. Thanks to Mike, once again, for tagging me in this one. Light up those comments. Let me know which books you guys would pick to fit any of the menu items for this Thanksgiving meal of books. How about? Do that. Also, please hit the like button if you enjoyed watching. Share the video far and wide with all of your SFF reading friends. And above all, please subscribe. If you have not done so, that is how the channel grows. You can also support the channel at my TeePublic store and at my Patreon, where recruits into Mike's Army get little perks like early access sometimes to my videos if I finish them in time to give you guys early access, but mostly what the Patreon is for is to help me pay Matt Olson, my brilliantly, beautifully talented, gifted channel artist who does all of my amazing thumbnails and things for me. So thank you all for that added support, greatly appreciated. I want to thank all the rest of you guys for being the very best viewers in all of BookTube, and until I see all of you next time, please stay safe and healthy, eat a lot, and happy reading.